She wants to drive Colorado's elections. Today, a judge took away her keys to her home county's elections. Another election rigging conspiracy theorist was using his University of Colorado email account to outline how to overthrow American democracy. Adding affordable housing, one homeowner at a time, deciding for themselves if they want to make room for someone else on the property. RTD gets real about its lack of money and lack of ability to deliver on transit promises. And a new tool to better tell when our skies will fill with wildfire haze. All that is next. She is running to oversee all of Colorado's elections, but Tina Peters won't even be able to run the elections in Mesa County, where she's the clerk. A judge ruled that today, that Peters committed a neglect of duty. The Republican candidate for Secretary of State will now be sidelined for a second straight election in her home county. Peters faces multiple felony charges linked to tampering with voting systems. She was searching, unsuccessfully, for evidence that our elections are rigged. Her breach of voting system security has made her a hero among conspiracy theorists, and it powered her to a Republican Assembly win that put her on the top line of the GOP primary ballot. Peters and her campaign have not responded to multiple requests to answer our questions. You can see extended interviews with both of her Republican opponents in the Secretary of State's race on the next YouTube channel. Colorado taxpayers had a tiny little role in trying to overthrow American democracy. Exciting stuff for all of us who have never participated in a coup against America before. But it turns out we were all paying for the time and the email account of the University of Colorado visiting conservative scholar John Eastman. Time and email that Eastman used to lay out how to overturn the presidential election. Those CU emails have now been sent to congressional investigators. And to our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger.
Emails from John Eastman's CU email address have been turned over to the Congressional Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Those emails were obtained by the group Colorado Ethics Institute through an open records request and sent to the commission. Eastman, who was in D.C. and spoke at the rally ahead of the Capitol attack, used his CU email to reply to questions sent to him by Republican Pennsylvania state lawmaker Russ Diamond. Diamond wrote, "Numerous other frustrated colleagues and I are searching for legislative solutions to our current national predicament." That national predicament was that Pennsylvania voters selected Joe Biden as president. But Diamond wanted to give that state legislature power to appoint presidential electors for Trump. One of Eastman's replies from December 2020 included the suggestion, why not just assert the right to appoint an alternate slate of electors and have them meet and vote on Monday as well? I asked Eastman about these emails in a phone call today.
I wasn't even aware that I had used the Colorado email. But somebody obviously reached out to me using that email, and I just hit reply. Look, I'm a constitutional expert. The notion that a legislator would reach out to me seeking my input on a key constitutional issue is not a surprise and well within my normal academic duties.
Eastman was also one of Trump's former lawyers who filed a motion to the Supreme Court 1 month after the 2020 election. That motion was to let Trump intervene in a lawsuit that was attempting to block Biden electors in 4 states, including Pennsylvania. The same day as that court filing, Eastman sent an email to CU from his Chapman University email saying, "President Trump asked me to represent him. Nothing on the pleading mentions CU, but I wanted to give you a heads up anyway." Eastman told me his legal work at that time was unpaid and he did not need to notify CU, but did nonetheless.
Because it was going to be newsworthy. And, these things had become intensely politicized and therefore controversial. And so I wanted them to be aware of it before they got blindsided. I was volunteering for this effort. That's an exercise of First Amendment political rights, and I was doing it on my own time. So there was no reason for me to have sought their permission or given them notice.
Questions for CU today. One of them was, when did it know Eastman was working on behalf of President Trump? That email that I referenced in that story was the first notice outside of social media and news articles a little earlier that same day. I also asked if the university was aware of these specific emails to the Pennsylvania lawmaker on advising on how to overturn an election, and a spokesman at the university tells me they were not aware until someone filed the open records request to get them and then sent them to the committee.
I love that Eastman's rationale is like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, if you want to overthrow American democracy and you need legal justification, I'm your guy.
On the phone, he compared it to any other faculty member responding to a question about their expertise.
Yeah. like spotted frogs in the Amazon or how to overthrow American democracy. Google search. Yeah, all right, Marshall, thank you. Lawsuit against a conservative group that went door to door in Colorado looking for voter fraud. Lawsuit against them is going to be allowed to go forward. The suit was filed by Colorado's NAACP chapter, the League of Women Voters, and Mi Familia Vota. The suit says that this group, calling itself U.S. Election Integrity Plan, USEIP, intimidated voters by showing up at their homes with guns and badges. They're also accused of taking pictures of people's homes. Our partners at Colorado Politics report that a U.S. District Court judge rejected a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. A leader of that USEIP group, Sean Smith, has suggested publicly that Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold has committed election fraud and should be hung. Significant win for the Republican minority at the state capitol overnight. Stall tactics by those Republicans and poor planning by the Democratic majority mean that some Democrats' bills are being watered down or plain abandoned before the session ends tomorrow night at midnight. Republicans in the legislature don't have the votes to stop anything, so they've been trying to run out the clock by asking for bills to be read aloud in full. That's a century-old throwback to the days when that could be requested by legislators who could not read the bills. A bill to ban flavored tobacco products in Colorado is dead, not because of stalling or poor planning, but because Democratic Governor Jared Polis was likely to veto it. The ban would have blocked the sale of flavored vapes, chewing tobacco, menthol cigarettes. That bill had previously been changed to exempt hookah products, cigars, and pipe tobacco. The bill was killed today on a bipartisan vote. Opponents had said that the loss of the tax money would have hurt the state. Governor Polis had indicated that he might veto it. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock vetoed a similar ban in the city of Denver last year. Neighborhood by neighborhood, Denver is becoming a friendlier place for homeowners who want to build a second, smaller home on their property. City Council voted to rezone 3 neighborhoods in West Denver to allow this. Our Katie Eastman looks at this address-by-address method of adding affordable housing.
They can be hard to spot, but look in the alleys and around the fences. That's where Denver City Councilwoman Jamie Torres says homeowners can take affordable housing into their own hands by building accessory dwelling units, known as ADUs.
We know accessory dwelling units often by other names, like a carriage house or a mother-in-law apartment.
Monday night, City Council voted to rezone 3 neighborhoods in West Denver to allow these detached units to be built. Villa Park, Barnum, and Barnum West join a growing list of areas in Denver where one barrier has been taken down.
They're being used for family to live in, for grown kids who can't move elsewhere, who aren't able to find a home of their own, for elderly parents and relatives, and for rentals.
Brian Cody's property in Villa Park was already zoned for an ADU.
And I think the kitchen and bathroom, I think this is where all this is.
He hopes to rent this out to his nieces and nephews graduating from college.
If they want to live in Denver, this is probably going to be one of their only options.
Building this is only costing him about $150,000, thanks to a city initiative through the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative. WDRC serves these West Denver neighborhoods impacted by gentrification.
If you were looking for a 3-bedroom in the city, you would not be able to build that at the price that we're building 3-bedroom ADUs.
Renee Martinez Stone runs the program, and not only do they help with funding, but they help homeowners navigate through the process of building an ADU.
And if it wasn't for them, honestly, I don't think I could afford it.
For Brian, who has lived here for 23 years, this extra income will be an incentive to stay and not take an offer from an investor.
I'd rather honestly stay here because there's nowhere else to go.
And it wasn't until Councilwoman Amanda Sandoval rezoned the Chafee Park neighborhood in 2019 that full neighborhood rezonings had even happened. Before that, individual homeowners would have to navigate the process and pay to rezone their property themselves.
So, Katie, if they're willing to go from individual homeowners to whole neighborhoods, why not just do it across the entire city? Say anybody who wants one of these ADUs citywide, go for it.
Yeah, Councilwoman Torres told me that a full rezoning of the city would have to be done by community planning and development, and not every community wants to have this conversation. She says they didn't want to wait, so they made it happen in West Denver.
Moved ahead if there might have been resistance citywide. All right, Katie, thank you. Time has run out for the Adams 14 school district. The State Board of Education voted 4-3 this afternoon to force that struggling school district to reorganize. That could mean consolidating with another district entirely. It could mean individual Adams 14 schools being annexed out into other districts, or the district simply dissolving. Adams 14 has been fighting with private contractors brought in to right the ship amid poor performance in the district. State Board of Ed decided that that approach was no longer working, so they voted for the full reorganization.
RTD gets candid about its financial problems and how they impact plans for the future.
I think it does no one any good to kind of talk about that pie in the sky if we can never actualize that.
And the next viewer wants to know who gets a cut when Zach Brown Band or Billy Joel comes to play Coors Field. The answer to where all that easy money goes, next.
Counting the money for RTD has got to be a miserable job these days. There's simply not enough of it to do what RTD wants to do, has promised to do. RTD's Finance and Planning Committee is meeting right now, and on the agenda tonight is a surprisingly frank discussion about their dire financial situation and what that means for the future. RTD is also planning to talk about a new ticketing system that should be in place by this summer or fall. Basically, the new system would hook up to your credit card instead of the current system where you have to put money onto a MyRide card from a bank account. And part of this discussion centers around getting rid of the discount that you get for using the MyRide card. People who currently have the card get a 20-cent discount compared to what people pay right there at the station. But back to the bigger picture issue. RTD wants to increase ridership. But RTD admits that its financial problems have led to limited or no capacity to grow bus or rail service. They can't make substantial capital investments. They can't complete any portion of fast tracks within the next 20 years. In fact, one of the slides they've got queued up for tonight's presentation talked about the significant gap between what the public expects and what RTD can deliver. Some on the RTD board say this straight talk is desperately needed.
I think this is an opportunity for us to really ground ourselves in that community value and customer excellence, where we're having conversations honestly and transparently about what it is that we are able to do, right, to manage those expectations. And I think historically, the general public and our stakeholders have not been used to RTD acquiescing in that way, that we are just being very transparent and honest about what our financial resources are, but what our human, right, capacity resources are to be able to offer the services that we do.
That's Chantel Lewis, who's shaking things up on the RTD Board of Directors. She says that hiring and retraining operators has been a huge setback for them. She's hoping that RTD will see the impact of its recently negotiated collective bargaining agreement by being able to attract some new people to the job by this fall.
Tonight's next question comes to us from Jeff. He wants to know if the Rockies have to share the revenue that they make off of the non-baseball events at Coors Field, like concerts.
Reason why Jeff asked this is because he saw a story about how the Baltimore Orioles don't like to host big concerts at Camden Yards because they have to cut the state of Maryland in on any money they make off the concerts. So, do the Rockies have a similar setup? Jeff, we can tell you, yes. The Rockies have a lease agreement with the Denver Metropolitan Major League Baseball Stadium District. That's a lot. Money made from non-baseball events at Coors Field is shared with that district. The district receives 40% of the net profit from those events. The district tells us about 15% of that goes to overhead for the events. The rest of the money then goes into the Capital Reserve Fund. That's essentially paying for upkeep at Coors Field. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the NHL Stadium Series game from a few years ago. I went to go see a Zach Brown Band concert there, stared at the back of a pillar for a couple of hours. There's a Billy Joel concert there in 2019, and there's an upcoming Lumineers show that's been rescheduled for this July. If you are wondering about something, anything Colorado, I guarantee you are not the only one curious about it. So send us your questions. Record them on video or audio if you would. It's a little more personal that way. Email it to next@9news.com and we'll find you an answer.
Colorado's next top model is of the weather forecasting variety, and it could give us a better idea when we'll be socked in with wildfire smoke. We know that scientists are tracking COVID trends through wastewater. So what happens when they find it? Is that COVID-laden water just pumped back out? It's your question. It's a good question. And it's next.
Wildfire smoke from New Mexico has been pushing up into Colorado for several days now, and tomorrow morning some of it could come into the Denver area. One of the best tools in forecasting wildfire smoke is a computer forecast model that came out of Boulder. It's called the High Resolution Rapid Refresh Model, or the HRRR. A new and improved version could be on the way. It'll model how much smoke a fire produces and where that smoke will go, driven by the weather. That's what the current one does too. But the current model only uses data that comes from satellites in orbit. So they only get a glimpse of a fire once or twice a day to figure out like how big it is, how it's situated. And if it's cloudy, those satellites might not get a single good look. NOAA says the new computer model is going to use those fancy stationary weather satellites. Now, the resolution won't be as good because they're 22,000 miles above the Earth, but they will always be able to spot the size, location, and intensity of a wildfire. That should improve the accuracy of our wildfire smoke forecasts. The new model may begin testing in Boulder this summer, but it won't be operational for at least a couple of years.
Sunny, windy at times, and warm today, but we go even warmer tomorrow. 80 today, could see 90 on Wednesday, the warmest day of the week, along with record high temperatures, gusty winds increasing ahead of a California storm. Low humidity values, these winds, which are already pretty blustery over the Colorado-New Mexico line, will continue to increase. Gusts of 40, 50, even 60 miles per hour are possible on Wednesday, and the humidity values today in the teens and 20s could drop into the single digits. So red flag warnings will be posted for high fire danger for much of the state tomorrow. And we'll see the potential for those record high temperatures after a very mild evening, a slight cool down on Thursday, and then sunshine and 80s headed into next weekend.
You all are a talkative bunch, and we're getting some feedback about Katie Eastman's story on wastewater testing showing a new spike in COVID cases in the metro area. South Platte Renew, a wastewater treatment facility, told us last week that they are seeing the second biggest spike of COVID-19 that they've detected throughout the pandemic, and they track this through wastewater sampling. Viewer named Patrick reached out to us on Twitter with a smart question. What do they do when the sampling's done? Is the virus somehow treated and removed by wastewater facilities before it ends back up in the South Platte River? South Platte Renew tells us they do disinfect the sample water before discharging it back into the river. They use sodium hypochlorite, basically a stronger version of household bleach that can kill bacteria and viruses. We have a sign for you tonight that a global pandemic involving a virus called COVID has been a real headache for the citizens of a similarly spelled town in Colorado. That and your feedback next. It's a sign that a town in northeast Colorado is probably sick of pandemic pranks. Ovid, Colorado, is between Sedgwick and Julesburg, right by the Colorado-Nebraska border. Sandy was getting off I-76 when she noticed some jabroni put a big white C on the sign, pointing people now in the direction of COVID, Colorado. If any one of the 250 residents of Ovid happens to be watching this program, we would love to know what is the best and worst Ovid COVID comment you've heard over the last 2 years. Or anybody else, really just email next@9news.com or tweet at us on the Bird app using the hashtag #HeyNext. Richard writes in to us tonight to say that he thinks John Eastman, a CU visiting professor, Trump attorney, he says Eastman's bad for sure, but is he more of a threat to democracy than the nitwits who are threatening Supreme Court justices and their families? Well, Richard, if people are directly threatening Supreme Court justices and their families, direct threats are a crime. I hope that those people are held accountable. But is that more of a threat than somebody planning a coup to overthrow American democracy? I'll let you be the judge of that. We'll see you next time.